everyone, my name is Cheryl and I'll be presenting our work, Anonymous Yet Alike, a privacy-preserving deep profile clustering for mobile usage patterns. On the agenda today, I'll firstly discuss the motivations behind our work, our research question, the deep profile framework developed, the dataset used, experiments, results, discussion, and some conclusions. Our motivations begin with the ubiquity of mobile devices and unprecedented use of mobile apps in people's daily lifestyles that has catalyzed the need for a more intelligent understanding of users. In order to better profile what lifestyle an individual leads and their behavioral patterns, it has become imperative to look at their actions in both the physical and digital sense. For instance, mobile app usage and mobility behavior has been shown to be strongly correlated, while app usage can also be used to predict personality traits. This level of user understanding is critical for personalization in the services used every day. For instance, personalized content on social networking, targeted advertising, and many other applications. And so in line with this growth, one of our strongest motivations is the increasing importance of the ability to profile users effectively based upon both digital and physical footprints. There are several challenges to achieve this, which also form part of our motivations. Foremost is a challenge of balancing user privacy with the specificity of targeted personalization. There have been growing concerns regarding privacy due to the extensive tracking abilities and data collection performed by corporations. For instance, Facebook gathers information such as your GPS location, what purchases you make, SMS log history, and much more, in order to provide personalized content and advertisements. Consequently, privacy concerns are on the rise, posing a critical challenge in the ability to provide personalization without undermining user privacy. It's only recently that works in app recommender systems have begun considering the concept of user privacy by including information such as a user's privacy preference to compare with an app's required data permissions. This issue will only become more profound as the population of technologically adept and thus data-aware individuals grow. As such, this raises the question of whether we can effectively profile users from anonymous data in a multi-contextual manner that does not contain any granular detail, such as personal information like age or even the specific app package used. Given that current techniques and existing works cannot overcome these challenges, the ability to do so will be a step forward in consumer segmentation and behavioral targeting that better balances the individual's data privacy and desire for better personalization. This leads into the difficulty of effectively mining patterns in users' mobility behavior without impeding on highly sensitive data, as location information is most easily and accurately detailed as a specific GPS location or longitude-latitude coordinates, and much of the work surrounding mining mobility patterns uses this kind of data. As such, one of our key motivations is to overcome this by possibly considering the nature of the surroundings instead. For instance, is it possible to still effectively group similar users together using information such as the types of landmarks around them? Maybe it's a financial district or there's lots of shopping malls in the area. Moreover, studies such as the app usage prediction work by you and colleagues have shown that point of interest, visitation, is strongly correlated with app usage patterns, since point of interest provide context as to why the user is using an app. Finally, the intricate and complex relationship between mobile app usage, mobility, and behavioral patterns has contributed to a sparsity of academic works on multi-contextual clustering of mobile users based on their digital and physical patterns. Context-aware app predictions is perhaps the main area where context such as mobility alongside app usage has been explored. However, in clustering and profiling users, works typically looked at individual contexts, such as aggregated values of app usage over a time period only. As such, these methods are not able to take into account behavioral patterns. For instance, is their usage highly concentrated in one moment? Most works also stop at this point of clustering, rather than further investigating the lifestyles of individuals. Users can be described beyond the cluster at a specific point in time, by considering how they transition throughout time. As such, being able to capture this multi-contextual complexity and overcome the challenges that come with it is a core motivation of our work. As such, this brings us to our research question. How can we predict meaningful clusters of mobile users using multi-contextual information over time in a way that maintains user privacy and allows for further analysis of behavioral transitions? We address this through a novel deep profile framework for multi-contextual mobile usage clustering and transition patterns. And an extensive evaluation of a framework through a real-world dataset of 4.2 million app usage records from 871 users. To the best of our knowledge, we are the first to propose a framework that produces multi-contextual clusters of mobile users based on 3 contexts jointly: user mobile app usage, mobility, and temporal behavior. Further, we believe that our proposed framework is the first designed to support effective analysis into mobile user cluster transitions throughout time. The DeepProfile framework we've designed focuses on this clustering of similar mobile users in these multiple contexts: the mobile app usage, mobility, and temporal patterns, to create groupings of individuals that are similar in all 3 aspects. The framework supports analysis into the behavioral transitions of clusters throughout time by clustering over a series of time segments that uniquely adapt to whatever data is used. The design of this framework was fulfilled in a manner that maintains user privacy by requiring only broader, non-personally identifiable features of input, whilst overcoming the consequent complexities in clustering that arise. I'll briefly discuss the different components that make up the framework. Starting at the input, this framework has been designed to only require low granularity in order to eliminate any need for personally identifiable and overly specific data collection, thus maintaining user privacy. The input data is a series of timestamped entries with multi-contextual information to achieve richer context-aware clusters. This includes information such as the app category used, total app traffic, and the number of surrounding landmarks belonging to each category of point of interest, for instance, 5 shopping, 3 educational facilities. The adaptive time segmentation method is the first module in the DeepProfile framework to which data is input. Mobile usage data is commonly recorded as a time series, and in order to study it properly, time segmentation is critical. Each individual's behavior and mobile usage varies over time, and devices record the exact timestamp at which they occur. However, our understanding as time, as humans, is not as precise. For instance, I might leave home and open up my Maps app in the morning. It's unlikely I'll do this at 7 a.m. every morning. One day might be 7:05, the next 6:50. Moreover, multiple users may also do these routines at similar but still different times. Thus, there's always a time segment for routine behaviors. Many past academic works have used large static equal time segments such as 6 hours due to its ease, for instance 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. Others use static unequal time segments to better grasp general phases of a day, for instance dinner time. Despite this, both methods fail to consider the broader cultural, geographic, and social nuances that can affect the time segment's appropriateness. For instance, some countries might have longer workdays due to their work culture. As such, we present an adaptive time segmentation method that detects change points in the overall behavior of a dataset to determine when new time segments occur. After the identification of all the time segments, our input data is partitioned according to the time segment and user each record belongs to. This is in preparation for our deep feature extraction model. As such, the input data records are partitioned such that each time segment holds a set of data frames, each representing the usage information for a specific user in that time segment. As mobile usage data is typically recorded at the exact timestamp whenever events occur, the resultant time series is irregularly spaced, and so we also evenly sample it according to a selected time window. The deep feature extraction model we propose in this framework is a convolutional autoencoder that can learn the most meaningful features in each user's behavior in each time segment. Convolutional autoencoders make use of convolutional neural networks, which are well known for pattern and image recognition tasks. This is due to its ability to exploit the fact that a particular pattern can occur in any region of an image. We apply this in our work here, as a time series is simply a contiguous length of usage records, much like images are contiguous blocks of pixels. Moreover, we'd like to identify similar behavioral patterns that don't necessarily happen at the same exact timestamp. As such, we use a convolutional autoencoder to train an encoder that can perform deep feature extraction and subsequently reduce dimensionality. These informative features are extracted completely unsupervised, eliminating the need of traditional feature engineering. After training the deep feature extraction model, we take out the encoder component. This encoder takes in each user's usage data frame and learns the most important features that best describes their behavioral patterns in all 3 contexts of app usage, mobility in terms of the visited locations, and temporal usage characteristics. As such, using the encoder for every time segment, we predict feature vectors for each active user. Finally, in our spatial temporal app usage clustering model, we conduct hierarchical agglomerative clustering in each time segment using the feature vectors produced from the DIP feature encoder. This will group similar users together in a multi-contextual manner. This means that all users will be allocated a cluster for every time segment of the week. We performed several experiments on the different modules in our framework, including the adaptive time segmentation component and also the DIP feature extraction model. These experiments use a real-world dataset, which is a Tsinghua app usage dataset. This dataset consists of data collected from a mobile cellular network in Shanghai, China, spanning a period of 7 days, containing 4.2 million records from 871 users and 9,851 base stations. Each record represents a data request on the mobile network by a user and contains an anonymous user ID, timestamp, base station ID, used app ID, and traffic. Data detailing the app category of each app and the number of point of interests in each point of interest category for each base station is also provided. Our first experiments were on the adaptive time segmentation approach. Given our dataset is 1 week, we could have taken various approaches, for instance, producing time segments for each day individually, or time segments for weekday and then weekend, or the entire week as one time series. Our next experiments were regarding the time window to be used for evenly sampling the input data records into appropriate data frames for each active user in each time segment. We investigated the impact of using 1 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, and 15 minute time windows on our results. Then we investigated the impact of different layer architecture for our deep feature extraction model. This included different combinations of layers and also hyperparameters, such as the number of filters in a convolution layer. We used a training validation split of 80% to 20%. We trained with 25 epochs at a learning rate of 0.001 using atom optimization through our empirical studies. To evaluate the clusters produced using the features generated from a deep feature extraction model, we used both quantitative and qualitative assessment, including the Kalinsky and Haribas score and Davies-Bolden score to form our judgment. The results from our experiments saw the best time segmentation approach to be segmenting one entire week as a sole time series. The best implemented deep feature extraction model used a 10-minute time window in the input data frames, with a layer architecture consisting of 4 sets of 1D convolution, max pooling, and dropout layers. The parameters for the convolution layer were a kernel size of 3, the first 2 sets having 32 filters and the last 2 sets with 64. This increasing number of filters allows the model to capture more complex combinations of patterns identified from earlier layers. Using this deep feature extraction model implementation, we then clustered our dataset for every identified time segment. As such, using the DeepProfile framework, we were able to produce clusters of similar users for all time segments. For instance, in the first time segment of our dataset, we produced a total of 64 clusters. Here's an example cluster 3 from that time period. As seen in the heat map on the left, illustrating the number of usage records these users had in each app category used, these users demonstrated consistent usage of utilities apps, recording around 100 to 150 instances of such usage in that time segment. To demonstrate the kind of locations these users visited in the most legible manner, the heat map on the right indicates the number of establishments in each point of interest type at the most visited location during the time segment. We can see the locations tended to have several business affairs point of interest in the area, with occurrences of life services, residential, government, shopping, and restaurants too. From this, we can infer the locations these users visited reflect mixed-use development that blends residential, commercial, cultural, and institutional establishments into one space. Firstly, for our transition analysis, which is supported by our DeepProfile framework, we examined all transition likelihoods between 2 consecutive time segments across the entire 1 week's time series. We found that the median value is 0.1052, indicating that in more than half of our transitions between 2 consecutive time segments, we have at least 10.52% of the cluster moving together to the next. The mean value is 0.1987, indicating that on average, 19.87% of a cluster moves together to the next time segment. However, further statistical testing is required to see if this is actually consistent across transitions between different pairs of time segments. In order to achieve this, we look at the mean likelihoods of each transition. The histogram of these mean likelihoods can be seen on the left. From observation, it appears to be possibly normally distributed. And so after examining the probability plot on the right, which plots the data against a theoretical normal distribution, we can see the points form an approximate straight line, which indicates that the data is normally distributed. Thus, since the mean likelihoods is normally distributed, we computed the confidence interval. The 95% confidence interval is 0.18627 to 0.23584. Hence, we can say that we are 95% confident that an average between 18.6% and 23.5% of a cluster transitions together to the next time segment. Our framework also allowed us to analyze cluster transitions above certain thresholds. For instance, here we provide an example cluster transition between two consecutive time segments where more than 40% of the cluster move together to the next time segment. And you can see that we've captured also the behaviors in app usage over time. The results of this work found that in our proposed DeepProfile framework enables the discovery of clusters of similar users in multiple contexts. Our evaluation using real-world data found the resultant clusters of individuals produced had similarities in multiple aspects. The app categories used, the behavior with which they use apps, the locations they visited in terms of what types of landmarks were in the vicinity, and the temporal characteristics of their mobility. The input data into implementation of the proposed framework was extremely high level, in accordance with our motivations. It did not consist of any granular information such as a user's gender, their age, or GPS location. Despite this, the clusters were still meaningful and distinguished from each other, with users in a cluster bearing multi-contextual similarities. This is in contrast to existing works, which tended to cluster users based on individual aspects only. Finally, we provided an extensive analysis into patterns of cluster transitions in line with our other motivations. We discovered insights such as how likely a cluster would transition together into the next time segment. As such, our work provides a step forward in terms of personalization through multi-contextual clustering that's mindful of user privacy. We also achieved it in an extremely flexible and adaptive manner, where time segmentation is unique to the overall behavior of the users in the dataset used, and cluster transitions throughout time can be easily analyzed. For the implications of our work, advertising is a clear, strong benefitter, as our framework allows multi-contextual personalization while maintaining user privacy. It could infer interests of users through app usage, the kinds of places they visit at certain times of the day, and behavioral characteristics in mobile usage. These factors not only benefit what product or service is advertised, but even maybe what kind of advertising technique is used. Recommender systems is a common implementation in smartphones to recommend apps or other functionalities to users they might find useful. Our DeepProfile framework can enable context-aware recommendations based on the cluster a user is in at a specific time. Recommendations can also be tailored to the user's lifestyle, rather than just based on what apps they typically use at a specific time and place. The proposed framework can also benefit social networking in providing personalized content. Posts can be catered to the user's interest, the place that they're at, and time of day without requiring sensitive data collection. Our contributions can also have implications on the concept of smart cities and tourism by limiting the ethical concerns regarding the mass data collection of civilians. If this threat to user privacy is diminished, there could be faster progress in the incorporation of smart city technologies. In the future, an interesting direction for further work is to explore the potential of a hybrid model that uses more than one deep feature extraction model for each type of contextual pattern. This could allow each feature extraction model to excel at learning patterns for the particular context it's trained for. Future work could also be in investigating modifications to the clustering method undertaking this work to enable automatic clustering that could be produced on the fly, completely unsupervised. Finally, evaluating the framework on larger scale datasets of different geographical or social contexts could provide further validation of our framework and interesting insights. Thus, this work paves the way for exciting further exploration into approaches to personalization that can still capture multi-contextual and behavioral understanding of users while maintaining user privacy. Thank you.